Action!
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of All Talk. Thank you very much for joining. My name is Mike All. Today we've got another fantastic Chicago comic. I know I have a lot of Chicago comics, but it's where we're at. That's who we know. But like I said before, I hate calling them Chicago comics because, you know, this guy, like all the other ones, travels everywhere. He's a nationally touring headliner. He's done NBC Breakout. He's done an album with Team Us called Friends with 401k Benefits, which is a fantastic title, by the way. I can't wait to talk to you about that a little bit. Please welcome Vik Pandya to the. How's it going, Vik?
What's up, Mike? How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for taking some time out of all of the time that we have.
I was gonna say I squeezed you in. You know, I was tough. I had to talk to my assistant to schedule some things around, but I got like 15 minutes, so just make it quick. You know, I got Netflix to watch.
Netflix to get to and everything. Yeah, it's done. So how's everything going? We'll start it off with you're healthy, family's healthy, everybody's good.
Yeah, it's been good, man. I grew up outside of Chicago in the burbs in Naperville, so I've actually come back home and I've been just hanging out with my parents for the last 2 months. So I think they're thrilled about it. You know, it's been, I think this is the most time I've spent at home since I've been in college, honestly. So, but for me, like, I was like, I'd rather have some company, you know, through all this. And it's just nice to get kind of a vacation, and at least you have more space in the suburbs to kind of spread out. So that's been good. You know, I've been able to stay healthy, like working out, you know, I've work outside and do stuff, and so it's been good. It's been, at least that part has been healthy.
Have any of your other siblings come back as well, or are they still living there anyway?
No, my brother's actually a doctor, so he's actually working during all this, and he lives in Oswego, so he's works as a hospital in the burbs. So he doesn't come, like, obviously he's not coming over because of the whole thing. So, but you know, we stay in touch. Everyone, the whole family is like very tight knit. So it's been good. It's just I just feel like we're all getting kind of cooped up in here, and it's like. I feel like my parents are at like their point where they're like, all right, you need to get out. Like we're overseeing you. It was cool for like a month, and now we're like, okay, we've had enough.
they're gonna show up one day, like you're gonna come like walking out of your bedroom door, and there's gonna be like 4 bags of groceries and just a note, like, you know, it was good seeing you.
They're like, we're in phase 3 now, so like I think you'll take your chances. You know, you'll be all right. Just go out into the world.
Exactly. Here's that in a gas card. Make sure you got plenty of. Did you have to bring a pet or anything home back with you? Do you have any pets?
No, I don't have any pets. We were actually looking at potentially like fostering a dog now or something, because a lot of people are doing that. And I mean, selfishly, I'd love it because like I have nothing to do, so I'd be able to take care of it and raise it. But then as soon as like comedy starts back up, I'm back in the city, and I'd just be like, all right, well, I guess you have to take care of it now, you know, to my parents, like just abandon it. But you know, they were like, yeah, we don't want to get too attached, because it's very hard to let the pet go if you foster it for like 2 weeks or a month. And we had a dog for 16 years, and like, you know, I think they want it, but they also understand, like, you know, they want it just because it's like we have the time right now. But I think, you know, in 6 months from now, it'd just be like, well, now we got this dog and we can't do anything, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. When you're back in the city, are you by yourself or do you have a roommate?
No, I'm by myself. And that's, like I said, I just, you know, would want to come home because I'm never in my place usually. Like I'm just always on the move. So it's weird to, like, the first few days I was there, I was like, all right, this is kind of cool. Like I'm able to hang out. And then after like day 3, I'm like, I'm going to kill someone. Like I feel so depressed. Like I'm just alone in my place. And I have like, I mean, I'm like a whiskey aficionado. So I have like probably 50 bottles of whiskey at my house. And I was like, I'm going to just be blacked out this whole quarantine. So I need to get home immediately, you know? So.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I need to go somewhere where I'm not it's weird. I bet you never thought, you're like, I'm going to go to my parents' house, so I'll drink less.
Yeah, which is so funny, right? I know. And it's ironic because I am drinking now, but this is a Friday, so we can do it. But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, I mean, they'll make comments and they'll like, they're not going to say anything. They're not going to tell me no, but they're going to be like, "Oh, drinking again, huh?" And it just bothers you. It's it's that nagging little comment. And it's like at my place, I was just like, whatever, man. It was like Wolf of Wall Street in my house. I was doing whatever I wanted,
Speaking of Wolf, I do have to make a comment because one of the things that I've always loved about you is up until recently, you always wore a suit and tie on stage. Now you've relaxed it a little bit. I mean, you still look good. It's not like you're coming in dressed, like crap by any means. But for your hair to be that long and actually have a beard, I feel like I need, this is more of a wellness check than an interview.
This is just an intervention to be like, Vic, are you okay? We've noticed you don't have a fade and you haven't been to the barber in 2 weeks. This is getting out of hand.
Yeah, something is not right.
I'm glad you brought it up because no one has thought the check-in, which is very rude of all my friends.
Yes,
I mean, I'm very, I think for me, how I view comedy is it's the whole thing, right? It's like what you look like on stage, your content, but it's also like anything. Everyone's first perception of you is that first 30 seconds or 2 minutes that they meet you. And I feel like if you're wearing a suit, for me, my content, I talk, I can do clean, but I also don't hold back if I do a normal set. So I feel like for me, I've noticed that I can say more stuff when I'm better dressed. And I love that. I love the idea of someone in a suit just saying horrific stuff, but it's oh, well, he's in a suit. It's fine. He probably knows what he's talking about. And I feel like it's true. I don't know if is it something that I believe or is it that I believe it? So I feel like it manifests it on stage, I don't really know. But I also just I think it's like a job. I'm not going to show up to my job and look like shit. I'm going to come there and look like I belong, I look like I'm a professional. So, and also I came from the finance business world. So I have plenty of nice clothes that I can use. And I'm like, why not, for an hour a night?
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah. It's funny too. Cause I know what you're talking about, where you feel like you can get away with a little bit of stuff. Cause I used to dress a lot nicer than I do now on stage. I mean, like I said, I don't come in slumming it by any means, but I've had, particularly women more than men say to me after shows or make comments when they've seen me
100%.
Something I've done online where they're just I didn't expect someone that looks like you to say something like that.
Correct. Yeah. And it's kind of, I think it just adds to that. It builds confidence early on, but it also just adds to this whole thing. Oh, we saw that comic and they're really well dressed and they're really funny. It just adds another kind of point to your repertoire. And I also think stand-up is all about standing out. We're all talking about similar things. So what way can we stand out? It's also being, funnier than everyone, but it's at the end of the day, it's how you look, it's a performance, right? So if you can have something that defines you, now everyone knows me as that comic. Cause my first year of comedy, I didn't understand that you didn't need to dress up. So I was just wearing suits to open mics, really crazy shit. And and it stuck. Now people know me as that guy, which is kind of funny because it's I'll say crazy stuff on stage, but I'm but he's wearing a suit. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that you bring up the suit at an open mic because one of my favorite accidental run-ins with you was actually over at Grand Rapids.
Yes.
During Laugh Fest. You weren't actually there for Laugh Fest. You were coming through, you had done a couple of shows and then you were going over to Sunday Night Funnies. We both ended up, I did Laugh Fest, and we both ended up at an open mic at this shitty,
horrendous,
smelly, it was so bad, dude. It was so bad of an open, and I was dressed pretty decent. Matt Laria was dressed pretty nice, and then you're in yours. And my favorite thing about that night was we both went up and fucking ate it at that open mic.
We looked at each other and knew. We knew.
Just knew.
But we were there. We had to go up.
We were there. A dog actually walked out in your set. I remember that.
Oh my God. I know. I was even this dog doesn't want to hear this content. This dog that can't speak back is I'm protesting. I'm out of this.
I'm out. And then you were like, hey, I'm going over to Sunday Night Funnies. You should swing by. And I was like, all right. And I went by Sunday Night Funnies. And I think you closed that out.
Yeah, I closed that.
And you closed it out and then crushed for 20 minutes.
That's comedy, right?
Comedy.
Isn't that
Mhm.
comedy? Like in a nutshell, it's like you can have your lowest point and highest point within minutes of each other. And I think
Exactly.
that's why it's like a sadistic relationship we have with it. It's like that kind of the knowledge that you can flip that quickly is what's like so appealing about comedy. Like what other profession can you change your fate like in minutes? Like you
Right.
have the opportunity to redeem yourself that night, which is crazy. And it's also like obviously, as you know, like mic dynamics for show dynamics, totally different.
Sure.
And yeah, there's not animals at the show like there were at the mic. Because also, like, how do you beat a dog? Like, a dog is
Right.
way better than whatever I'm gonna say. You know, it's a
Yeah.
dog.
Exactly. Even while you're on stage and I want to listen to you, I'm like, I want to pet that dog. Like
Yeah,
I'm
and like you know me. Imagine a stranger.
yeah, exactly. Oh man. So one of the things I learned when I was Googling you that I didn't know about you, you do a lot of sketch and improv too.
I actually do
Um,
not sketch. I do some improv. So I started doing stand up, but I also started taking improv classes at Second City. So
mhm.
my improv group, like I met two of the other people that I founded Team Us Comedy with in the first level of improv at Second City. And that whole group has actually stuck together from the Second City days. So we actually graduated together, this whole Second City improv program, and then we hired an independent coach who would
Mhm.
coach us every week. So like while I was doing stand up, every day, like once
Yeah.
a week I'd have like a 2-hour improv rehearsal, and that kind of I feel like it just kept my that riffing muscle sharp and help my stage presence. And like I always think of the skills as complementary. I don't think of them as opposing. So for me, I was like, if I can get this rep, like I never really performed in many improv shows except like
Mhm.
maybe once a month or whatever, but because I was doing so much stand up. But like the improv skill of being able to do that every week was huge. Like I still think that's a valuable skill.
Yeah, I took the Second City all the way through A through E. I
Yep.
auditioned for conservative. I didn't make it, but I actually got a really nice email from Norm, which I heard wasn't actually normal. Like,
Nice. Yeah. No, I don't
um,
think he talks to anybody. Yeah.
yeah, because somebody was like, they told me they were like, just email Norm, he'll give you notes.
Yeah.
But most people who don't get in don't email him, and I was like, well, fuck it, I didn't get in. Like, what does it matter?
Yeah. What does
And
it
he
hurt?
was really, yeah, what is it? And he was really nice. He was like, hey, you need to work on your acting a little bit, but honestly, you were in a really good group. Like, and I was like, all right, I'll take that.
Yeah.
But I agree with you in the sense of I liked the I liked the improv because it made me feel like I was. It got like in stand up. I feel like there's that pressure to be funny all the time, right? Like
Immediately.
that's why
Yeah.
we're there immediately.
Yeah.
With the improv, that pressure isn't there. And I felt like taking the improv classes and kind of learning a little bit when I was messing with the audience or an audience member was messing with me, or if I wanted to riff on something, I felt like it took that pressure off of me to be funny in that moment because I can recover. I think that's what improv taught
Yeah, it
me
gives you that
more than
confidence to go like long a little bit. Like as you know from crowd work, like when I first started doing crowd work, I always thought of that as like I needed to make them like I needed to have a joke immediately. Like I needed to have that kind of
right.
funny thing immediately. And then as I started doing more and getting comfortable with it, I was like, oh, sometimes it's just funny to have the conversation, like the tension builds, right? And then you just repeat
Mhm.
what they say, and that's funny. And then it's just like being like the confidence, like you said, of being able to recover, like knowing you can riff into another bit or knowing you can kind of like come up with something dumb in the moment. And I think improv too, like it just gives you that ability to kind of like vamp or riff for a longer time. Like I think stand up is like if it's not pre-recorded or pre-written, you're like, okay, I can't deviate from my script. But like now the way I do sets is so different than when I started doing stand up. Like I don't even if I'm doing 10 minutes, like I'll probably know I'm gonna do about roughly 5 in my head, and then the rest I'm like, I'll figure it out. I'll connect the dots. Like the way I figure it out is totally different from when I started doing stand up.
So I ask a lot of the people that I talk to this, and I'm sure it's probably getting boring for people hearing me ask it again, but it's just one of my most interesting questions that I always like to know because every comedian to me is different.
Yeah.
Um, are you a writer or are you and more of an improver where you get on stage like do you like write a premise down and then you go and work it out, or are you a dot your i's cross your t's, write it out exactly how you want it and then get up and perform it?
So it's interesting because I feel like I said, when I started stand up, I was the writer. I'd write the whole bit out. I'd go on stage, I'd try it. And like, the problem with that is like, if you don't get a laugh during the certain part or you miss one part, it's hard to remember kind of where you were at, and you might, skip something. But the benefit of if you just write the premise down, then you go try to work it out, then you can just like go wherever the laughs go. Like you can kind of follow what happens. But obviously it takes like more confidence on stage to do that. Like I wasn't comfortable doing that when I first started. But I think for me, I feel like now that this whole quarantine has happened, like I'm having to do that again, where I'm actually writing the bits out further.
Right. That was going to be my next question.
Yeah,
Are
because
you
I have
going
to.
back to that? Yeah.
Yeah, I have no option, right? And it's actually been nice because now that I'm actually a better writer too, I can write the bit out like to maybe 70%. And then like what I have to try and figure out is a lot less than what it would be, a year in. So it's actually been good because like I was getting almost reliant on the other way where I'd like, because now I don't like in Chicago, at least, like I'm well known enough that I can go to an open mic and like I don't need the pressure of trying to kill at the open mic. Like I can go up there and I can just try 14 premises and not care. But like that's kind of a crutch, right? Because then you're just like they're not caring. And you're just like, I'm gonna run through these premises, whatever. I'll go work on them into jokes if one gets a laugh. But it's like, no, come on stage with some stuff that's prepared. Don't just like use this completely, completely care whatever everyone else thinks. So like I feel like it's actually been good. It's forced me to kind of write more than perform more because that's just what we got right now.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you too about emceeing because I think you're an interest. I don't think case study is the right word, but that's what comes into my mind because, and I think I've talked to you about this before. The very first time I actually saw you was at Zany's. You were a month-long MC, and I hadn't seen you before. And I was sitting in the back, and I thought your comedy was good, but I thought your MC skills were completely lacking. But within like, I came back like 2 weeks later, and you had really tightened up those MC skills and gotten it. What, if anything, if you remember in that 2 weeks, or just even in your emceeing, what was kind of a switch for you that made you realize? Because emceeing is you have to be funny as an MC. There's no doubt about that. But you have to be confident in controlling the audience. It's always the headliner show, but it's also the MC show, right? Like the MC is responsible.
100%.
So how did you, I was impressed. I just have to say I was impressed how quickly you kind of caught on to that and picked that up. That was impressive. But was there something in there in that time frame, or did somebody give you a piece of advice that kind of sunk in with you?
Yeah, it was a combination of things. I think when you first probably saw, I was like, that was my first month MC, which is like, huge. It's like a huge pressure point because you're like, I got to be funny for, 10 shows a week, day after day. And I'm like, this is like it's amazing. It's like fantastic to get it, right? There's only 12 spots a year. It's awesome. But you're also like, how can I do this? Like, this is so difficult to do this day after day.
Right.
So I was just in my head, which is, as you know, in comedy, like it's bad enough to be in your head when you're doing a set. It's even worse when you're an MC. So when you're an MC, you got to be present. You got to be in the moment. You got to react to everything. And I think I just started watching, like I always watched the show, but I really started paying attention to the MC. Like, Jim Flanagan would go up and the way he would MC is just so like, it was a formula. He'd do, he'd start with, 5 minutes of crowd work, and then he'd do 5 minutes of jokes. And then he'd, bring up the first comic. So it's like he'd have this formula where he'd train the audience to start liking jokes again, but he'd do a set amount of crowd work. And I feel like for me, I was just kind of like, I was just doing a set. I wasn't really focusing on crowd work. And then I started getting more comfortable with like my style. And I was like, oh, I am like a naturally kind of, I like to do crowd work. I like to talk to people. So I just started trusting my instincts because every comic is different. So I couldn't really duplicate what he was doing, but I could at least take the formula and approach it that way, where I'm like, I got to start with some crowd work, then I'll get into my set. And as you know, like if the show is great, the crowd work can take up 90% of your set. So like you could do crowd work all day and then do 2 jokes and bring up the feature. But if the show is bad, you may get 2 minutes of crowd work. You're like, all right, well, they hate every time I talk to them. So I need jokes. So I think for me, I just realized like, first of all, I had to take the pressure off myself. I was like, I'm here for the whole month. Like they clearly believe in me in some level, but it's like, when you first get that, you're just like, this is crazy. Like they only book headliners to host. Like why are they, and I was featuring at the time. Like, I was like, why are they booking me? So I was like, I just had a lot of like things in my head about it. And it was just the prestige of being on that stage. And once I started getting more comfortable, like now I love like emceeing because I come from volunteering to do that. And like, I think for me now I think I have like 4 or 5 months under my belt. Like that just sharpened me up so
Yeah.
much because it's just night after night of like, you can tighten jokes really easily because you can do them day over day, but it's also just the confidence of like, there is some formula to this, but at the end of the day, it's like, you're your own person. Like however you want to do it is going to be different than how I MC is going to be different how you MC and vice versa. But you just have to trial and error. And like, I think being comfortable enough to fail, like even on the zany stage was what got me kind of good quickly. But it was scary initially.
Man, I remember my first face plant at Comedy Works in Denver. So I kind of came up through out in Denver at Comedy Works, and Comedy Works is, top 5 club in the country.
Oh, yeah.
They're
great.
Absolutely amazing. And I remember the first time I like just completely fell on my face, and I was like, they're never gonna have me back. Like that feeling of like, but then every comedian is like, no, you know how you sucked at an open mic? Yeah. Well, you can suck on a stage
at
a regular club too. Like,
and you don't know that, right? Because you think like once I hit Comedy Works or Zanies, you're like, every show is going to be good. And it's like, no, shows can still be bad anytime,
Right. Yeah. that Sunday night at Zanies at 8:00 might only have 7 people. And
oh my God, I know. And I mean, I don't know if you know this, if you've been downtown recently, like, those 11:15 shows on Saturday can be awful. But, lately, actually, before this all happened, they were doing something different. They were giving away tickets to those shows. So like they would actually have a great, like fresh audience. So I went into the, like a month of emceeing, like regretting. I'm like, oh God, it's Saturday. Like here comes the 11:15 show. And then like, they're packed. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like these are fun shows now. So it was really interesting because even headliners who worked there before, like all know that 11:15 show is just like, whatever, like I'm going to do new stuff. But like, it was actually really fun because they started figuring out how to make that a good show. And it kind of kept you energized that whole night because you're like, I got this third show that's going to be totally like whatever happens. It's crazy. People are drunk. Like I'm drunk. Like, like whatever happens. And
exactly.
It was great. It was like they padded the room, but it was people who wanted to be there. It's 11:15. Like if you're there, you want to be there.
Yeah, because it's like the Friday night late show are typically pretty rough too.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. We were talking about this before we started recording. You've done a couple of Zoom shows, mainly like some private corporate stuff, but you've done a couple of public Zoom comedy shows. Other than the obvious of like being on an actual stage in person, which makes it better. What's more difficult, Friday night late show or a public Zoom show where you can barely hear anybody anyway?
I mean, I still would take the live experience over the virtual because at least like the live experience, like you're with the people. I just feel like the Zoom thing is like I said, I'm doing them because I need to get the reps in just to feel like I did something, but, and some of them have been good, but it's just like, it's just weird because you're dealing with like someone's internet connection is basically the whole show. Like someone could have a bad internet connection and ruin the entire experience for everybody. Right. So it's like, they could be lagging. They could laugh at the wrong time. And it's like all these things as a comic, like, when you're live and it's like that immediate thing, you can pivot, but it's sometimes hard to pivot when it's like on a second delay because you're already on to the next joke and someone's laughing from the previous thing. And you're like, are they laughing at the setup now on this one? Like you're confused. So it's almost like what I've been doing is doing like a lot of newer stuff just because I'm like, it doesn't make sense to come in here with like all this pristine material where I can work out 10 new minutes and figure it out. Because it's like, what's the downside? Like it's still going to be, it's even the best set on Zoom is like the okay set in real life. So it's like, it's
still
like
slightly above an open mic.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's like, it doesn't matter,
Yeah. So speaking of live shows, you're actually the first comedian I've asked this to, and I'm kind of interested in your take on it. Everybody's take on it, really. But what do you think the stand-up world's going to be like when this is all done? Like when they phase it out and they're able to open, what do you imagine that being like?
I think what we're going to see is like a big rise in like the underground and independent shows, because there's a
Mhm.
lot of really great, especially in Chicago, there's a lot of cool shows that pack out that no one knows about. Like there are shows that are very in shows, like the Shithole, which is like, I don't know if you heard of this show. It's basically, they don't promote the show at all. They put a poster up once a week. They do like 2 or 3 shows a week. Every Sunday
Mhm.
there's a show, and they get 50 to 100 people every show. And it's got this cult following, and it's like a really cool model, and it's all about the art, and it's not just stand up. It's like all sorts of stuff. And like
Mhm.
shows like that, where it's like based around the community aspect, I think those are the shows that are going to succeed. I think it for the performers, for comics, like we'll still be able to find those audiences, but the problem is that means money wise is going to get even worse, because it's like we're
Right.
going to get less mainstream work, less kind of work where it's like paid. So we're going to have to do those, because it's like we need to get the
Right.
reps in, but it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to get as many corporate gigs as you're getting, because also companies don't want to spend money on things that like they're letting go a lot of people. So everyone is kind of just like waiting. They're like, I'd rather hold on
Right.
to my money than not. But I also like, when I first, this whole thing started, I was like, no one's going to want to come out and be in front of people. But I think now that we're seeing like states opening, I think people are just like sick and tired of being home. So I feel like we might get a little bump, in June or whenever we open, of people just so like, they just want to do something, and they want to, and I think laughter is like the perfect way to get through this. Is like, we've been cooped up for 2 months. So it's like,
Right.
we need jokes. We need to feel like we're together experiencing something. So, I mean, I don't know. I just think it's going to be weird with the laws of like how many people you can have in a room,
Sure.
which will
Yeah.
restrict it. But
What about, let's say, because who knows in Illinois? I mean, we could be locked down another month, right? Let's say worst case scenario, we're locked down until the end of July, right? Like it's
yeah,
still, everything's not really opening. So let's say Texas is doing okay, or Florida or Louisiana is doing okay. Are you going to reach out to those clubs down in New Orleans and be like, hey, I'm up in Illinois, but I'm looking for work. There's no work up here. Would you travel if the money's right to go down to New Orleans and do work?
yeah. I mean, and I think I didn't even realize, like, I didn't think about that at all. Then I saw someone pose that as like, hey, I'm thinking about moving. I mean, you've probably seen this. Like, there's a lot of people I know that are leaving Chicago for good. They're like, I'm moving back
Right.
to wherever I came from, Colorado, Texas, whatever it may be. And I was like, they're like, the scenes there are open. Like, I'm able to do comedy there now.
Yeah.
So for me, I didn't think about it, but I've been touring more now just on my own as a headliner feature. So like, I was already kind of on that trajectory. So for me, I would totally do it. It's stage time. It's also, like you said, if the money's right, like you're not going to turn that down normally. And if there's no gigs that are keeping you in, Chicago, then why not? Like you
Right.
have no excuse. I mean, other than the fact that it's like a little scary, but it's not like when I go to these places, I'm like, like rubbing elbows with the locals. Like I'm doing my set and I go on to the next
Right.
thing. And it's like, unless it's people I bring like to the show or I know some people, I'm not like the type to necessarily like just like be super into the, like whoever's there, like I treat it like a job. So I do the job and I leave.
Yeah.
So for me, I feel like if I take like proper precautions, like hopefully it'd be okay. But I also think there's just going to be a huge demand for like, other like nationally touring headliners who are like, more credits, more mainstream are probably going to be snatching up those spots too. So it's going to be
Right.
hard for like people like us to kind of get those spots. I think we're going to be like locally might be our only option, because people are going to be like, have to go with these bigger names to draw crowds.
Right. Yeah. I as I sit here and I listen to you talk about it, I think one of the things that I'm very lucky about is I have friends all over the place. Like I have friends and family in Tampa. I have friends in New Orleans. I have family in Texas. I have friends in Washington State. Like I think a way that might work is, especially comedians, we know people all over the
Yeah,
place.
you got a network.
I think there's going to be a whole lot of like calling up your friend in Texas and being like, hey, I want to get this gig, but I'm going to need a couch to crash on for like,
Yeah,
and I
100%.
haven't been in that situation in a while,
Yeah.
but I feel like, I feel like I'm going to be having to go back to some of that, like, hey man, I could give you a couple bucks a night to let me crash on your couch or buy you dinner or something, but
It's going
I
to be
need this
very
work.
humbling, I think, for a lot of people to be like, Like, you think once you get to the club level comic, you're like, all right, I'm over some of these atrocious gigs or atrocious shows.
Right.
And you're like, no, now we're all bumped down 2 or 3 levels. Like, you're going to have to take those bar shows. You're going to take those gigs like that you may have said no to, or you just didn't even come across your plate anymore because you're at a certain level. But now it's like, I'm scooping up, and I'm also like, I always was like this, but I'll do every show. Like, I don't care what it is.
You're a hustler, man. You're a straight up hustler. So.
I mean, I don't care. I'll do a hot 5 at a funeral. I don't give a shit. I'll do whatever you want. I mean, I'm the worst. I'll message everybody. Like, I don't care at all. Cause like you have to get the stage time in. And also like, it's one of those things where I think I've noticed that comedy is like half of it is perception. Like if people think you're working, they're going to be like, oh yeah, like who do we book for our show? And they're like, oh, I just saw like Vik's name in this show or in this thing. And they're like, oh, we'll book him because he's like clearly doing other shows. So it's just like, if you can be top of mind all the time, like that has gotten me, I think, a lot further. Obviously it's like, committing to writing jokes and being funny, but it's like half of it is also the behind the scenes, like the promotion and the constant kind of, like you said, the hustle. And I think that for all these, like when this opens up again, how we're going to structure these tours and these like hitting up your friends, like it's going to be the people who work that work harder are going to get those opportunities.
Well, I think that's one of the things too, like, I think a lot of people, they see the Kevin Hart's, the Bill Burrs, Joe Rogan's, Whitney Cummings, the list goes on and on and on of them doing everything. And they think that these people are, that comedians in general, they show up and they work for an hour. Like, now granted, those bigger names, they have agents that are doing a lot of the shit. You and I mean, this is a job, not only do I have to write and perform and get my ass there, I have to book that gig in the first place.
Yep.
Like,
you're the performer, you're the marketer, you're the promoter, you're every piece of this business. And I think going back to what we're talking about with like dressing well, like if you're a business and it's your business, like how are you going to represent yourself? You're going to look like shit. Like no one's going to want to buy that product, like, but I'm a year into comedy, but I'm wearing a suit. I might get a spot, like I might suck at comedy, but I look presentable. They're like, this guy looks like he knows what he's doing. So, and it's like, that's how I got a lot of stuff. Like, I mean, like this business, anything in entertainment is like fake it till you make it. Like, that's definitely like, I'll agree to things that I'm like, yeah, I'm probably not prepared for this, or I didn't know, but that kind of makes you elevate your game. Because you're like, I know I got to do this 20-minute clean, and I've only done 10 minutes clean up until now, but I'm like, I know I have 30 minutes of material. Like, how can I figure this out? And it's like stuff like that, I think for me is constantly pushing myself in those ways. Because otherwise you just become stagnant, and then you become one of these bitter, stagnant comedians, which is like the worst thing that can happen.
Worst thing to be. Yeah. It's funny. One of my favorite stories is, you say fake it till you make it. So back in the early 2000s, when I was out in Denver, I got to open for Daniel Tosh. And this is when his star he wasn't huge by any means, but he was headlining. Yeah. And so after the show one night, he's like, you want to go get something to eat? And I said, sure. And so I'm one of those annoying guys that's always like picking somebody's brain, So I was like, I was just kind of talking to him, asking him how he got the headlining. And he's like, dude, I wasn't getting any headlining work. So I just started lying. I just started saying I was headlining all these clubs on my shit that I was sending out, and no one was checking it. So they just started headlining me.
That's so funny. And he's obviously he's a great comic. Right. That's so funny, but it's kind of true. Like, I mean, I don't necessarily know if I would lie, but at the same time, because now I think it's very easy to fact check stuff now. Like, it's very simple to be like, oh, where was this person? Like, look at their social media, look at, call the club, text the club. Like, you can just very easily, but that is a good point, is like, I think the lesson there too is like, he believed himself to be a headliner. Like, he felt like he could do the time, and clearly like he did it, and he kept getting more work. So it's like, he was doing well, he rose to that occasion.
Yeah. I think one of the things too, now that makes that a little bit more difficult. It might have been like this back then, maybe not, but bookers now from all those clubs, they kind of know, like all of the big clubs, they all know each other, right?
Oh, like they talk.
They definitely talk on a regular basis, Well, you know, thinking about like coming out of this, what it's going to be. One of the things that I find, like when I Googled you, that I keep finding when I Google comedians, is it seems like everybody that I've had on has one weird IDMB credit,
Oh yeah.
and you do as well.
Yes. Yeah, we can talk about that.
You played a character named Krish on Code Switch.
Yeah,
right?
so this is a web series called Code Switch that is coming out next month. Actually, we filmed it like 2 years ago, and yeah, it's crazy. Like I've honestly forgotten what the show was about because it's been that long. But it's like it's one of these cool things that this guy made the show, and it features everyone from Chicago, like comedians, improvisers, sketch people.
Mm-hmm.
And like he didn't audition me. He just like heard my name through another comic, and he's like, I need a Indian male lead who's got like comedy chops. And he came and watched me at a couple shows. I didn't know he was there. He was like scouting me in a way. And he came from IO, like video comedy background. And he basically came to watch me and talked to me. He's like, hey, do you want to be an actor in the show? And for me, I was like, this is great. I don't have to audition. I don't have to do anything. Like, yeah, I'll do it. You know, why not? And it was one of these things that developed into this really cool thing. Because then he's like, hey, who do you know who's a funny this person? And as comics, like we know, like you said, you have a network of people. So it's like I knew, you know, sketch people, I know musicians. And so we kind of built this really cool cast. And the show was basically about like South Asian men and women. And it's like a day in the life type of thing. So it's like it's a comedy, but it's like it follows all these stories and they intersect in a way. And it's very cool. All shot in Chicago. And what was great about it is like we had the freedom to kind of improvise. And like, you know, the first time we did the pilot, it was very like structured. And then after that, he realized I'm like, we're all comics. Like, I don't want to memorize shit. Like I want to do unless it's my words, like I don't care about this script, you know, like I felt bad saying that, but it was totally true. And it was actually a really good experience for me because up until that point, I was like, you know, I have a certain aesthetic and a look. And I was like, I should be an actor as well as a comedian, like a stand-up. But after doing acting and reading someone else's words, even words that I enjoyed and thought were funny, I was like, I can't, like, I'm a writer. I'm going to the writer way. Like, I'm going to try to be a writer on late night or something. Like, I thought of myself as an actor just because of like the visual element. But I was like, I hate this. Like, I hate going to a set and sitting there all day. Like, as comics, as you know, like we're moving, like we're doing stuff, you know?
So,
It's just like immediate satisfaction.
Exactly. That's the worst thing of tying it back to emceeing. That's the worst part about emceeing. You got to stay for the whole fucking show.
Oh my God. I know. And that's what, you know, it was funny because when I first started doing those Zanies months and like, I would talk to these features who had been working there for years, like, you know, people who are headliners or features and that like Larry Reeve and people like that, like they'd get there right as the show started, leave right after the set is over. And I feel like it's funny because now for independent shows, I'm like that too. Like if I'm headlining an independent show, I'm getting there like 8 minutes before I go up. Like, because it's like, it's your time, you know, you don't need to. And after you get to a certain point, you're like, I don't need to watch the entire show. You can kind of synthesize what happened in like the first few minutes. And it's like, it's one of those things too. Like that's the best part about getting better at comedies. You spend less time at comedy venues. It's like, that's my favorite part is like, I get to go late or leave early, whatever it may be.
Whenever I get to the show late, I don't have to be there at the beginning, the first thing I always ask the MC is anybody celebrating a birthday? And has anybody said anything to
them?
Yeah. You know, like, I want to make sure that I'm not stepping on, you know, that I don't look like I want to make it look like I've been here the whole time.
Yeah. And I think like, and you know this, like if you go to a show and you're on and one of your friends or someone you know is on, they'll start volunteering that information like to you already. Like that's how we are. We just talk about the show. So it's like, you kind of get that information, you learn to pick it up and be like, you watch like a few minutes and you're like, okay, I can kind of figure out what I'm going to do. Cause the worst thing is like repeating crowd work or repeating what already happened in the show. And then you just look dumb. You look like you weren't paying attention and the audience, like you can't ever let that audience know that you don't know. And I feel like that's what I realized too about emceeing is like, I was here thinking like I need to be funny all the time, but the audience is already impressed that you remember the person's name from like 2 minutes ago. Like they don't need to know that you have no idea what's happening next. You know, they have no idea. Like just being able to stay with the pocket and in the pocket as an MC or even as a comic is like, that's huge. Like that just shows the audience, like, you know what you're doing and you may have no idea what's happening, but you may just appear like you do. And it's like, it goes back to that fake it till you make it. Like And you'll
Yeah.
also come up with something that's better if you give yourself that space.
Yeah. I always like to tell people too, like, when I'm doing a show on a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night, usually Thursday night shows will usually have a good crowd.
Yeah.
So a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night show, like, it's hard not to be funny at a lot of those shows. Those people are out for a good time. It's full.
Paying audience members. Yeah.
Right. As long as you're good. So whenever people always tell me, they're like, do you have a show coming up? Or, hey, I want to go see this person, that's maybe not a big name, but I heard they're funny and they're going to be here this week. I always tell them, go Tuesday or Wednesday for two reasons. A, they're needing people in there, and B, I love watching comedians work. And those are the shows that you get to really watch them work on and dig in that material and see what they're really good. Like going to comedy on Tuesday and Wednesday nights is always my favorite. It's not always my favorite to perform on a Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, but it's a good case study for sure. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. I think the same thing. It was funny when I first met a great comic, a Zany's dude too, Nate Weatherup. I remember I first met him. And he was talking to someone else because I was emceeing. I think he was featuring or something, or it was either I was featuring or hosting, whatever it may be. I think I was featuring because then he's like, I love when Vik hosts because he's a good joke writer, but I love when he goes off script because he's like, that's when he hosts, he goes off script more. And I forgot who he was talking to, but I was like, it was interesting to hear that, like, he's like, because on like a Monday, Tuesday, like he's pulling shit out that like we haven't heard yet because he's just working on stuff or whatever it may be. And I was like, you're right. Like on Monday, Tuesday, you're working. Like you're putting in, the extra effort because it's not going to be as easy as just like these great laughs. Like you have to really try. And I think comes from that is like that ability to fight in the moment, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. I always tell people, they're like, how much time do you need to be a headliner or a feature or whatever? And I'm like, it really depends on a lot of things. Like you should have X amount of time.
Yeah.
But I also always tell them, like, to be a feature and you're supposed to be doing 30 minutes on a Friday night, you should have 45 minutes, but you're only going to do probably 22 to 25 minutes worth of material.
Correct.
Because you're going to have so much other filler in there. But to do 30 minutes on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, you're going to need all 45 minutes of that.
Yep. Like, you're going to burn through stuff. I think I did my hour at that Grand Rapids mic. I think I did the whole thing. That's the thing. Like when comedy's going well, it flies by, right? And when it's going poorly, you feel every minute feels like an hour. And it's like, you're pulling out your greatest hits, you're pulling out closers, you're pulling out like great jokes, and you're like, nothing is getting these people. And it's like, it's such a funny thing. It's like, I tell people to say, my advice to everyone is like, if you're going to host, you should have double the time. If your host said, if you're going to feature, double the time, because while maybe it's a good show, maybe they're not into this type of material and you have 10 minutes on this, like you got to be able to pivot, and you got to have that material ready. So I think, and if you're at the headliner level, you probably have more than an hour.
Oh yeah.
So it's like you have that time already. But if you're doing 15 minutes as a feature, you should have 30 kind of in the can just in case you need to pivot.
Sure. Yeah, and I always try and finish with people when I'm telling them that one of my really good comedy friends, like he was not just a best friend and a mentor, the thing that he always taught me about, if you're thinking about the time that you have to do, you're focusing on the wrong thing.
Yeah, that's like, great.
Like don't focus on that shit.
Yeah.
Go up there and be funny until the light comes on, man.
Yeah. And you know what? That's great. Cause I for a long time, doing those, cause 15 minutes, like Zany's is different because it gives the host more time. And it's like, it's a very, like you said, it's a headliner show, but it's also the host show. And I feel like that whole model, like completely changed my perception of what it was. Cause as you know, like the host at Zany's is like, if the headliner wants less time or more time, the host usually picks that up. Like that, the host is kind of the person who can pivot. So, you may have to do 20 minutes one night and then maybe do 10 the next. Like you're constantly changing your set. So it's actually really helped because like, you go up there, you're like, I'll go. So a lot of times I've been like, the headliner's not here yet. They're like, we'll give you the light when we see him. That way, they're in the room. So it's like, you just go. So you just got to go. And it's like, it's kind of crazy, but it's like, it makes you adapt that mentality of like, I go till I have to get off. And it's like, it's kind of like a sink or swim thing. And that, I think once you can get past that mental block, like you can do any room, any set, you know, any amount of time. And that's really what it's about.
Yeah, I like the way that Zanies is doing it now. Comedy Works has been doing it this way for a long time. So Zanies typically now will do 2 features that do somewhere between 15 and the co-features, and depending on the headliner, they'll do between 15, 20 minutes. The way that Comedy Works has done it for a long time, that I was like, they have like an A and a B spot. So that they'll have the MC that'll go up and do 10 to 12 minutes, maybe 15. Then they'll have the B spot go up that does a 10-minute set. Then they'll have the A spot that goes up and does a 20-minute set.
Interesting.
And then they'll have the headliner. So
nice.
You get a good mix and you get some good solid. And then it also, you know, you increase your pay in there as well in those 2 different spots. And it gives you a nice stepping stone working up.
That's great.
Which is really great the way that they do that. So, well, it's been great talking with you. Before we go, I'm going to do this little thing that we call ambush. I have no idea what words are in here, and let's have some fun. Let's see. Spelling test. So my 8-year-old had a spelling test today, and she had a spelling test today, and she's being taught by me. So you can imagine how that went.
Man, this Zoom call should have been 2 hours. You got to get an Indian in your life to help with the spelling bee.
Exactly. I should go wake her up. Hey, come here.
Yeah, come here. We're going to learn some stuff. No, it's actually really funny you said spelling test. One of my first like horrible, like very hack openers was I was like, you guys don't know me from comedy. You may know me from your nephew's spelling bee, where I crushed him. I was an opener. I started my set with that. And I thought it worked, which is what made me worse, like made me angrier actually, is that it worked. Because sometimes, you know, these dumb kind of stereotypical jokes do work. But I was like, I can't do this after doing comedy for 5 years. I can't be doing this joke. But at the same time, I was like, man, that's a quick little joke that works. And it annoyed me because it was like, it was one of those things that was instantly relatable and everyone knows, you know, and also like, it's not a bad stereotype to be smart. Like, I'm not mad about that, you know?
Right. Just to be clear, Vic's not saying he can't spell. He can spell.
Yes. I want everyone to know that within the first 10 seconds of me doing comedy.
Do you miss, it's funny, that's why I like doing these words. It kind of brings other things up. So speaking of like kind of those kind of jokes like that at the beginning of your career, or even before you started, that a lot of people call, and I'm not calling it what you said like a hack joke by any means, but more like a street joke or those easier jokes. Do you miss some of that easy work? I mean, at the level you're at now that we get to now, like it's not always easy. At the beginning, it felt easier at the beginning because we got to do those easier kind of, let's call them street jokes or whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's what I find too, like a lot of the bits that I have now, like I have a lot of bits that have like a lot of subtext. I talk about race, I talk about relationships, I talk about like some political stuff, but it's like, there's a lot of undertones to what I'm talking about. So sometimes it could be a little heavier, but it's like, I realize like if I'm doing that, the joke's got to be that much better. Like I got to have more punches in there. And I think I also have that. So I have a lot of jokes like that, but then I also have these absurd, really like just dumb, nonsensical jokes. Cause I think that gives it like levity. Like it balances that out. Cause it's like, you don't come to a comedy show to hear like, you know, a TED talk. Like you want to hear jokes. Like you want to be entertained. So it's like, if I'm going to say like some great point or poke fun at a particular group, like the next joke I have is going to be something that just is so dumb that everyone can laugh at it. And I feel like for me, those were the majority of the jokes when I started, because it was just an easy way to get laughs. But I wasn't really saying anything with my comedy. And not that I'm like, I don't want to necessarily always have a point. Like I think comedy is just funny at the end of the day. But I also think it's nice to be able to like, yeah, I made this person laugh, but I also made them think a little bit. You know, I think that's cool to have that kind of double effect. But at the end of the day, like I'm definitely in the camp of sometimes like not every joke needs to make some great grandiose point. Sometimes those street jokes are funny. Sometimes stereotypes are funny. Sometimes like, you know, it's also got to read the room. Like you're not going to go into a weird, like a really far southern room and start talking about like race relations, like
Right.
you're going to have to
Exactly.
understand your context. Like,
Yeah.
and that's the thing, like you don't want to pander, but at the same time you're there to entertain people. So you got to know your job. So
Yeah.
I think for me, like, yeah, it's definitely evolved as my comedies progressed, but it depends on so many factors, like the amount of time you're doing. If you're doing 5 minutes, maybe don't lead with, the heavy joke at the top. Like maybe,
Right.
start with just those quick wins and then get to that joke at the end. But like if you're doing an hour, you're doing 45, 30, you can get everything, but it's
Yeah.
just like understand the what you were hired to do and fulfill that with the best mix. I think you can.
Right. Yeah. That's one of the things. Like I've had a lot of different style of comedians so far. Like, and I like your style because your style is, um, you don't have to pay attention, but you have to be smart. Like you get, like
Yeah.
you're gonna make you, it's gonna make you think. And then there's other comedians. Like one of my favorite comedians I've actually had him on is Vince Carone. I love Vince because not only is he smart, but he's so quick.
Yeah.
Like you have to pay attention or you're gonna miss
Rapid
something.
fire. Yeah.
It's just, like, and you got to stay up with him. So I like that a lot too. So, all right, let's see what else we got in there. Oh, machines.
Oh, interesting.
Machines.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a good one. I mean, I feel like comedy is slowly being phased out. We're already being virtualized. Like the next thing you know, you're going to be asking Siri to tell you a joke, and then that's it. We're obsolete.
My girls were asking Alexa to tell them a joke all the time, and I'm just like, what the fuck, man? Like, come on.
You're like, I'm a professional comedian. Like,
right, exactly.
That's so insulting, right? You're like, I'm right here. I'm right here.
Right. Well, but at least Alexa's going to tell them a joke that they're not going to get in trouble for telling at school the next day.
That's true. That's a good point. It's moderated. Yeah, it's moderated content.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, I got one more here. Let's see what we got. Candle.
Mm.
Are you a fan of the candles?
It's funny. My girlfriend made me a fan of the candles. I was like, because before I had like a serious girlfriend, I was just like a perpetual bachelor. Like I was just, my place is like, everyone who comes into my house in the city is like, this is a serial killer's apartment. There's like nothing there. It's just very sparse. And I'm a minimalist type of, I like my spaces open, but I didn't have anything like in terms of comfort. Like it was just very like to bring a woman over and not have any candles. Like, what was I doing? I just didn't know. And I actually I enjoyed it. I was like, I lit a candle. I was like, this is great. This is a huge ad. And also everyone looks good in candlelight. Candlelight is the most flattering light. I'm amazed at how, like, I thought like the yellow kind of low light of like a bar, but candlelight is incredible. Like it's crazy.
I'm going to have to start lighting my Zooms with candlelight.
Yeah. They're like, this is a very sensual set by Mike. This is, but actually, speaking of, I did a show. I headlined this show by this guy. His name's Renee in the city, and he runs a show at this place called Sori, and it's like this little dive bar, and it's one of those like really like hipstery type places. Like you open a bookshelf and go downstairs, and it's like this tiny 10-person, 20-person room. They got like a DJ and in the corner, and it's like there's all these candles lit. It's like red overlights and candles, and he's like, all right, you can do 20 minutes in here. And it was just like, it was so weird because I just felt like I was interrupting everyone on their dates. Like everyone here is happy, and now I'm like telling them about all these dumb things, and it was like really fun, but it was such a I was like, I feel like I have to wear like a velvet suit to do this show. Like this was such a sensual show. It was great though, but like something about the candlelight and comedy, I'm like, I don't know if this works or this makes everyone just like love each other. Like it was very weird. It was a very weird environment.
Yeah, that's what is that one of the weirdest rooms you've been in that you've performed in?
Oh no, I've done some horrific private gigs that were, I did a show at a restaurant. I think it's called Blackfish. It's like a kind of like a stir fry type place in Oak Brook. And I did a show. So you think you're doing a show at a restaurant. You're like, okay, there's like a private room, whatever. Yeah. Me and my Tyler Fowler, which I don't know if you know him. Him and I do a bunch of these corporate and privates together. and we go to this show and we realize there's no back room. These people just hired us to do stand up at their table in the middle of the restaurant, in the middle. And there's no microphone, obviously. So there's 8 people in a table in the middle of this like bustling restaurant. And it actually was okay because we didn't have a microphone. So you're talking, but only the 8 people are going to hear you because it's like a loud restaurant. But it was so weird because you're competing with waiters dropping off food. Yeah. Like that's your heckle is like someone bringing the entree is like, you know, but it was really, I mean, it was fun, man. Because I was like, hey guys, I was hosting, I guess I was the first comic and I was like, hey, I'm not going to take too much of your time. We got to gig at the Cheesecake Factory after this. Like we were having a good time. Like we were like roasting them and stuff. But I mean, I've done shows like that where it's like, I think being able to do stand up anywhere is like, that makes you kind of impervious to any gig. And that's kind of what these private gigs will do to you. It's like, you think open mics are bad. It's like, there's levels underneath that.
No.
You know,
it's what makes open mic bad are, and I hate to say this and I sound like a pretentious prick or anything like that, are the comedians. It's usually not the,
that's accurate, right? It's true. Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, I've done stand-up comedy at a strip club right before the strippers are going to go up in Wisconsin. Yeah. I know Wisconsin isn't a big surprise, but
well, that's the only place you could do it. They're like, if you were in like Vegas, they'd be like, there's no way he could try to follow this. Yeah.
Not only did I do it, a strip club in Vegas. So I pull up, it's the middle of winter. I pull up, there's nobody in the parking lot. And I pull in, but the place is packed.
Oh man.
And that's when it hit me. I went around back, snowmobiles everywhere. Like everybody had ridden their snowmobiles.
It's the most Vegas thing you've ever heard.
But none of them were there to see me.
Yeah.
You know,
did you just have to do the time to get paid?
Yeah. Just do the time. I was like, 20 minutes. All right. I'm going to just drop my head and go. Like,
yeah. I did a Vegas, like the first time I think I went to Vegas after I started doing comedy. Like it's very, obviously Vegas, as you know, like you're competing with, you know, Jerry Seinfeld. So it's like the independent scene there was very weird. And the people who run the shows are also very bizarre. But I did this show like off the strip in some dive bar, and it actually seemed okay. Like there was people at the bar when I got there, but I didn't realize the show was like a dirty show. So all the people who were there were just disgusting. Like everyone was just gross. Like everyone was the first comic. There's like a younger family in the audience. The first comic was just like, let me tell you about incest porn. I'm like, oh God, like he just went in. And it was just horrific. And then I get up and I remember there was a Hell's Angel, like biker gang walks in during my set. And I'm like, and I'm not the typical Hell's Angel type of person they want to see at a show. So I'm doing my set and I'm actually doing okay. Cause I just started doing really dirty stuff, but I get to this closer that I had, which I don't know if you've seen me do this where I grind on somebody. I take a male audience member up and I dance on them. And it's like, it's a really funny closer. And I was like, you know what? I'm in Vegas. Like, fuck it. I'm going to dance with one of these Hell's Angels dudes. Bring this guy on stage, like a biker with like tats, like fully. And I grind on this man in front of like his friends and family. And like, it was incredible. He was so into it. I was like, this is why comedy is great. Cause like my perception of that group and him, I was like, I had this idea in my mind that they're going to be bad. They ended up being fantastic. Right. He was like super woke. Like this dude was like, it was so weird that I was like, man, this is why I love comedy. Cause like up until now, this show was just filled with psychopaths. And it turns out the Hell's Angels crew was the most sane group at this bar. And it was just kind of cool. Like, and I got to experience that. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll go gamble after this. But it was just bizarre, you know, bizarre show.
Yeah. It's not like you put woke and Hell's Angels.
No, you don't think of those things together. Yeah.
They don't go together very often. So, hey, well, Vik, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with me and getting caught up and laughing. Before I let you go, you want to put out Instagram, Twitter, websites, any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so definitely. You can find me at Vik, V-I-K, Pandya, P-A-N-D-Y-A on Instagram and Twitter. And then on Facebook at Vik Pandya. And then TikTok, which I'm plugging now. I'm doing some TikToks.
Are you some TikToking? Nice.
Doing some TikToking, which is a weird format, but you know what? It's getting views, so whatever. But I'm at VP_comedy on TikTok for dumb, you know, you see some sketches, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, you can find my album Friends with 401k Benefits. It's on Spotify, all the streaming platforms, and we're dropping the actual video content on YouTube every week. So we got like 7 chapters out right now on Teamless Comedy's YouTube. So check that out as well.
And then you said the Code Switched is actually coming out in a month or so?
Yes, that should be coming out. I think June 12th is the date. That's going to come out on YouTube, so that should also be free. Like I said, the pilot episode won a bunch of awards and everything, so it's going to be a great show. It's about like 10 to 15 minute, short web series. So I think there's like 7 episodes, so you can knock it out in like an hour. Code Switch, but keep an eye out for that as well.
Nice, awesome. Hey man, thanks for joining me. Stay healthy, and I hope to see you in person telling jokes again real soon.
Yeah, man. You too. Thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks, man. Take care.